Hey guys, Drifter here. Welcome to Black Ops Cold War in Depth. In today's episode, we're going to be reviewing the KSP 45 submachine gun, which is probably the one that I see least online, and that's kind of a shame because the KSP might be one of the most low-key powerful weapons in the entire game. I just wish it were more consistent. It's not an easy weapon to use, but it has such absurd, insanely powerful potential. I have a feeling it could almost be considered a competitive weapon or best SMG, depending on how you're using it. It's just so finicky, like a cat. Sometimes it loves you, sometimes it hates you. It's very hard to master, but let me just jump into the stats and tell you why I love-hate this weapon, and we're going to start with a hate. The KSP bullet velocity is only 200 meters per second. This is tied for the slowest bullet velocity in the entire game, and that's tied with the M1911. This is slower than any weapon in Modern Warfare 2019, and this is also just painful. This is brutal, this is miserable, it's not fun. Even up close, my shots don't feel like they're registering properly. I feel like I'm lagging or I'm getting some kind of delay. The first couple of levels with this weapon are brutal, and I think you're definitely going to need a bullet velocity boosting barrel for your shots to feel normal. Once you put on pretty much any of the barrels that boost your bullet velocity, the weapon starts feeling a lot better, and it's going to start killing a lot quicker, and you're going to be a lot happier with it, but the initial levels are going to be pretty harsh. Let's talk about why this weapon kills quickly, which is its just absurd damage profile. It'll kill in between 3 and 5 shots, depending on how far away you are from the enemy, with a damage profile of 50 damage per shot up close, and remember base health is 150, 38, and then a small decrease down to 35 that'll cause one more shot to kill. 50 damage per shot is insane. It is literally mind-blowingly insane in this game. That's a 3-shot weapon. There aren't many of them, and that's on par with light machine guns and the crazy powerful burst marksman rifles. This gun dump trucks, okay? The headshot multiplier is 1.4x, which is the same as it is in all the other weapons, and that doesn't help you up close, but it will get you 1 less shot to kill at long and medium ranges. Pretty much anything outside of that maximum damage range, getting a headshot will help you out. And of note, this massively extends the fast time to kill of the KSP if you can land headshots, because one of the weaknesses of the gun, and we'll get to that in a little bit, is that yes, it kills very quickly up close, but if you miss a shot, well, you have to wait for the burst delay and then burst again, or if they're too far away, you have to 2-burst people, which again has a pretty slow time to kill. But 1-bursting people by getting in a couple of headshots just massively extends your fast time to kill range and makes the weapon way better. When it comes to ranges, it has a pretty normal range for submachine guns. The max damage range is 11.5 meters. That's not super long range, but it's just very normal, very unspectacular. It's a little bit outside of the range at which you could shotgun somebody reliably. When it comes to the rate of fire, however, it's going to be a little bit slower than its bigger brother, the M16, and its even bigger brother, the AUG. It fires at 722 rounds per minute. The other 2 burst rifles fire at 1200. They have about the same burst delay, however, of about 88 milliseconds, and this is kind of slow. The actual rate of fire of this gun and burst delay is slow. It's not impressive. It doesn't feel good. It kind of reminds me of the SWAT 556 from Black Ops 2. It had a good time to kill, but just didn't compete with the M8A1 because the M8A1 shot so much faster and it was easier to track targets with. That's going to be kind of a good comparison of this weapon to others. But let's take a look at time to kill calculations. Okay, so the KSP will kill with close quarters body shots in 166 milliseconds, which is extremely fast in Black Ops Cold War. And I'm telling, this is the 3rd fastest killing weapon in the game. The AUG, I think, kills in 150 milliseconds, so 1 frame different. And the M16, which is the fastest time to kill in the game of anything that's not a one-shot kill, is only 2 frames faster at 132 milliseconds, and 2 frames is an amount of speed that you probably won't notice. The point of this is to say that the KSP kills almost as quickly as the M16 as long as you hit your shots, but it has SMG-like handling properties, which is very, very nice. Before I move on to the next section, I just want to doubly emphasize just how much this weapon shreds up close. You see a lot of my gameplay being in close quarters combat. I mean, there's a lot of small maps. You see me hip firing a lot. You see me surprising people, killing them in low health. This gun truly dump trucks inside that 3-shot range. Handling stats are pretty normal for SMGs. Aim down sight's time a little bit on the slower side at 275 milliseconds. Sprint out time is 250 milliseconds. That's different from the in-game measurement, but that's the statistical measurement that Ace and I use, and those are pretty normal for submachine gun. Nothing really crazy about that. It also has a very normal reload and hipfire stats. It's the same as all of the other assault rifles and SMGs. Almost all of them are 2.4 seconds for reload and 7 mil for hipfire, so not really different than any other weapon there. That being said, though, I think the KSP is actually a good candidate for being a hipfire-based class because it kills so quickly up close, because you're often in people's faces and barrel stuffing them. Adding a laser and tightening it up for hipfire is just always a good idea. The KSP's overall recoil, in my opinion, is awkward. It has a lot of side-to-side wobble and not a very tight burst, and this makes it very difficult to use as a, burst fire weapon. Not that it's horrible, not that you can't control it, but I really struggle with burst fire weapons. I've kind of always struggled with those, especially on PC. I don't track my targets very well, so the slow speed of the burst and the kind of left-right compensation that I have to do mid-burst makes me very uncomfortable with this weapon. That being said, it doesn't take many attachments to tighten that up a lot. If that's a major problem for you, there are a lot of recoil reducing attachments that you can put on the weapon and make it very laser-like. In my opinion, however, you're not going to need very many of them. The weapon is best used up close and best used at ranges where that little wobble and inaccuracy isn't particularly important. In my opinion, the iron sights are trash, just like me. As trash as I am at this game, that's what the iron sights are, man. Those things are very difficult to use. I find them bulky. I find it very difficult to track the target, which is a shame because the foresight's actually really thin and skinny, and normally that means it's easy to track with, but as I mentioned before, the way the burst works, it tends to shake the whole barrel of the gun, and it makes it awkward to track the enemy, and the muzzle flash is kind of directly on it, so it's very annoying. I don't use the iron sights. I've seen a few other players make very good use of them, but I can't because I'm actually trash at Call of Duty. I just can't make any use of them whatsoever. I have to have optics of some kind. And before we move on, I just want to talk about the inconsistency of this weapon. The KSP absolutely shreds within the one burst range. I mean, it deletes people. It blows minds. They cannot believe that they are dying this quickly. It is super fun, super satisfying. It feels like everything that Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War should be, but it is miserable if you're at long ranges. If you're trying to hit people far away, this gun has a very slow time to kill. The somewhat awkward burst means you're probably not going to hit all your shots, and that's if you're trying to track them while they're moving across a burst. If you miss a shot up close, you're going to feel bad and self-conscious about yourself and then probably die while you wait for your second burst. This is truly an all-or-nothing coin flip super gamble kind of weapon. If you can fight in a way to always draw enemies within your deletion range, you're going to have super good performance. If you start trying to take on assault rifle users at long range with this gun, you're going to have a bad time. As you can see, the KSP is going to be a very polarizing weapon. Your love or hate for it will depend on your skill and style. In my opinion, the KSP is a higher skill weapon. It is not going to be super easy to use for newer players or players that struggle with aiming and tracking and setup and things like that. And even if you are a high skill player, this one requires a certain sense of style, a certain play style that is a little bit more patient, a little bit more calculated. It is not an anytime, anywhere, good to go weapon like the AK or MP5. You really have to be more particular about your engagements. That being said, I think that super high skill players will really enjoy it, and God, I know I'm going to get savage for this in the comments, but I genuinely believe that it could have a place in competitive matches. No, it's not as spammy and as easy as the MP5, but if you're playing against only other people that generally don't miss, and you're not going to miss either, then why not choose the weapon that has twice as fast a time to kill and just delete your enemies when they rush you with the MP5? Probably because if you don't do that, then it'll be like a year before you can shoot again, but it has potential, you know. Let's go ahead and talk about the best class for this weapon, which is what you've mostly seen gameplay of, and in my opinion, it's a very unusual class because almost all of the attachments I'm going to recommend are ones that you will get before level 15. I do not know why, but I never got good performance out of the KSP when I started putting high-level attachments on it. I was never able to fully kit it and optimize it and make it a good functioning weapon. I got everything that I needed out of the KSP very, very low level, so this is a low-level class for the weapon. First thing you're going to put on there is some kind of optics. I like the microflex, not going to waste a lot of time on that, but they help you track, which is a good thing. I will then use the muzzle brake for 45 ACP, which gives me a little bit of vertical recoil control and no downsides, which is very important. Next up, I'm going to use the reinforced heavy barrel, which gives me a little bit extra effective damage range and extra bullet velocity. It almost doubles the bullet velocity, but it makes it enough to where I can work with it up close, and it gives me a little bit of extra 3-shot kill range. Then, is what probably the most important, the super important attachment is the front grip. The very first grip that you unlock will tighten your horizontal recoil by 15%, and since the weapon has an awkward horizontal recoil, this one is stupidly important. Be sure to use that one, and it has no downsides, which is also great. Then finally, I just put speed tape on there for plus 10% aim down sights time with no downsides whatsoever, and the class that I've effectively made is using all of the first couple of attachments, but it's a pure bonus gun. There is no downsides to anything I've put on the KSP. I've tightened up the vertical and horizontal recoil, and I've tightened up I've increased the ADS time. It already sprints out really good. It's an excellent weapon, and there is nothing wrong with that class that I recommended. You will absolutely slap people with it if you fight up close. Guys, I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something useful. If you did, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe. Drifter out.